Three, two, one.
Hi, this is Eric Humphrey, and along with Dwight Zimler, we've just completed this book, Growth, Modernity, and the Nations of Wealth, that deals with the mysterious question of how the West became so rich so quickly. And as promised, this chapter is about the modern world, what we call this vertical world where growth really takes off. And as promised, we're going to start talking about this in purely economic terms, just like we talked about the non-growing world in purely economic terms in the previous chapter. And we introduced this whole graph in the first chapter of the book. But the problem with defining the modern world is that we get lost in our expectations, hence our name, Lost in Expectations. That is, we see the modern world to our present entitlements rather than our real historical accomplishments. So we end up asking the question, what have you done lately, rather than what have you done historically? And the emphasis here will be the historical treatment of modernity. And we can see how this graph works, so that we have to understand this world, we're arguing that we need this big picture. And we can understand why our expectations really get in the way of trying to understand the modern event. This world grows, and as it grows, our states become capable of doing more things, and so we ask for those states to give us more things. We focus more on progress rather than what actually happened here. This book, Growth, Modernity, and Nations of Wealth, is going to try and focus on what happened, how this world happened. So we remember the parts of this world. This long horizontal world with no growth, this vertical world that coincides exactly with the modern world, and this strange event right here, this breakout. And these two worlds are truly strange. This is a world of no economic growth, and this is a world of very noticeable economic growth. In this world, there's no such thing as economists. They simply don't exist, of all the sciences. In this world, our modern world, there's nothing but economists. Here, in the pre-modern world, generals rule, experts in allocation, resource allocation based on violence. But here, we principally use merchants, that is, experts in resource allocation based on markets. This world, there are two classes, a ridiculously rich and a ridiculously poor class. And in this world, there's more, hopefully, of a middle class, a class in between these two radical extremes. In this world, there's a religious view, which we call this sort of a philosophical view, the organic analogy. This is a world that sanctions natural human inequalities, whereas this world obsesses with democratic theory. How do you justify societies composed of equal people? In this world, there's nothing but the hamster wheel of history, the gaining and loss of the mandate in heaven. This world believes in progress. This world believes in moral restitution to the past. This world believes in some sort of revolution into the future, whatever that might be. Finally, this is a world of place and order. This is how the philosophers of this world talk, world of natural inequality. And this is a world of freedom and progress. So these are very strange worlds, and how do we understand them together? How did this world become this world? What does this inflection point mean? Now we know that this inflection point can't be the way we normally taught it, as humans simply fulfilling themselves, fulfilling an essence within them. It's some sort of historical event. And we know that it's not in human nature because right up here we have modern Italians at the top of the graph, and at the bottom of the graph we have Romans. And both Italians and ancient Romans have the exact same measure of human nature. So what we're trying to explain is an event. So like in the previous chapter, we're going to talk about this world purely in materialistic economic terms. We're going to talk about its culture without being culture. So what are the things that we can talk about our event? It needs a time and a place. So one thing we can say about the place of modernity is, first of all, number one, noticeable material growth, what we called the breakout of the iron fact itself. So this is noticeable material growth. Then there's a change in location of the wealth. Modernity is some sort of per capita efficiency effect. So wealth is migrating out of that single upper class, 5% of the society at most, and down into society. So there's a change in the location of wealth. This is our efficiency effect. Number 3, we notice there's a rise in derivative forms of money. Now, what does that mean? Well, in the old days, we could use this for money, gold. Now we have these weird kind of promissory notes. What are they? What do they represent? They're sort of certificates of trust. So the very meaning has changed. And as that has changed, we come to 4, the rise of a market economy. And that is, this is an economy that as wealth is decentralized, you have decentralized buyers and sellers. So you've broken this monopolistic hold and it allocates more on the price mechanism, which won't work in a monopolistic setup. Finally, number 5 about this new modern world is the appearance of an utterly new type of science, economic theory itself. There's ancient astronomy, biology, medicine, but there's no such thing as ancient economics. So that tells us that however problematic the past may have been practically, it was not theoretically problematic, not enough to summon economists into existence. So from this, we then get a cultural superstructure that grows out and complements this world. That cultural superstructure is just going to be like the basic framework in the previous chapter, but now we're going to convert this vertical world into modernity itself. So we have number 6 big fact, the decline of the basic framework itself. That is the cultural view that societies are made up of unequal human beings. The idea of revolution will replace the idea of restoration, and progress and the belief in progress will take hold of us. This marks, number 7, an end to the intellectual captivity. That meant what used to happen in the mind stayed in the mind. Consider the difference between Plato and Adorno. If you ask Plato what is knowledge good for, he would say to participate in the mind of God. Whereas the Marxist thinker, Adorno, would say thinking has no purpose, social thinking has no purpose unless it's about the emancipation of the masses. Correspondingly, the scientist, which might have remained sequestered to himself in the ancient world, is now going to become the engineer in modernity. So moderns, big fact number 8, become obsessed with democratic theory. As wealth diffuses into society, this creates a political legitimacy crisis for the state. How do equals justify a division of labor? How do they justify who's king and who works the farms? This is very difficult. So how do we allocate resources without having to bop each other over the head, like in the basic framework? So that's what democratic theory grows to address. It addresses a very difficult question. Is we know everyone wants to be Che Guevara and the revolutionary and the king, but no one wants to clean the latrines. We still have to clean the latrines. So also at the end of the intellectual captivity, we have the rise of modern science. Modern science is going to be very different from ancient science. It's going to be mean. It's going to give us unflattering views of the universe. It's not going to be good for human self-esteem. Look at Copernicus. He took the best seat in the cosmos and gave us a marginal seat, if at that. Look at Darwin. He took our ancestors, and rather than noble things created by God, our ancestors are things that, we might put in the zoo or serve at Christmas dinner rather than invite to Christmas dinner. And finally, science justified itself with technology. That's how it paid the rent. That is, it was an abusive but well-paying boss. We all know those. So it gave you sugar and spice and television and smartphones, and you put up with that monkey and bad seed in the cosmos stuff. Now we come to the 3 big facts about our event. Events needs a place and a time. And these facts are not much liked or appreciated by most theorists of modernity. That is, what was Western Europe like between 1650 and 1850? Well, it's marked by division, profound division. This is just a structural observation. Westerners do not come from Westia and they don't speak Westish. But the Romans came from Rome, they spoke Latin or Greek. Chinese came from China and spoke Chinese. Instead, there's this divided constellation of states. And there's another big fact that's related to this one, and that is war, constant war. This was a place of incessant warfare and the routinization of crises. There was no Pax Romana, in spite of the best efforts of Justinian, Charlemagne, Napoleon, Hitler. There was no Pax Romana. Rather, there was a tenuous balance of power, sort of a stalemate of equals. And finally, the third big fact about this place of modernity is the rise of an utterly new type of state, that is the nation state. And this is truly a strange thing. It's the opposite of an empire. Everyone in the empire was basically economically homogeneous. They were all farmers, and ethnically heterogeneous. They spoke different languages. It's very doubtful whether most Roman subjects could understand Greek or Latin. That's not true of modern Germany today, where everyone understands German. So this is a new, strange kinds of state that theorists don't like. Economists don't like nation states because they interrupt their reduction to selfish individuals. And humanitarians and social theorists don't like nation states because they interrupt our common humanity. So now we have all of these characteristics that form a unified syndrome. The good characteristics in time, which we tend to like, and the bad characteristics in place, which we think we have to get rid of, and that these are not really related to our good characteristics. So we now know of modernity as a syndrome of interrelated characteristics. So we can now put this on par with the basic framework, and we now have our two competitors. The basic framework in the pre-modern world that doesn't grow, the world that happened once this breaking of this constraint on GDP happened, modernity, which we now know from a series of historical characteristics. And now, the rest of the book is going to deal with this. What the heck is this point that marks a transition between these two worlds? Thank you.